Good evening. Good evening. Good to see everyone here. I'm glad you are here at our Wednesday night service here at Central Church of Christ. I just have a few announcements before we get started. Pat Stevens is having knee replacement surgery on this Friday, April the 5th. Alice Carson fell last Friday. Thankfully, he's just bruised and sore. Nestor Sylvia, a friend of Dawn and Babs Bridges, is in Costa Rica, has a tumor behind his eye. So please keep him in your prayers. Sam Richards, the young friend of Susie Powell, was burned in an accident and is at Children's Hospital. We offer our deepest sympathy and condolences to the friends and family of former member Tim Smith, who passed away March 30th. Services will be April 5th at Green Pines Funeral Home in Yulee, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Yulee, Florida. Visitation will be at 1 p.m. with the funeral following at 2 p.m. If you haven't seen some of the things up here, we have the 21st is Walk for Water for Tie for Christ. What's the time on that? Can somebody shout that out? 2 o'clock, thank you. 2 o'clock, we're also doing the senior slideshow. There's a lot going on that day, a ton. So we got senior slideshow right after services. That's for the youth group. Then we got the Walk for Water for the college group. And then at 4 to 6, there's a fish fry and spring fling. So a really, really busy Sunday, April 21st. Tonight, it's our singing night. Judd's going to get us started off, and then we're going to have some of the younger men in the youth group lead some songs, and then Grant is doing our lesson, and then Justin will have our invitation song.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
In heavenly armor we'll enter the land. The battle belongs to the Lord. Stand. The battle belongs to the Lord, and we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord, and we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord. Darkness, Gentile flood, the power belongs to the Lord. Stand the power of his sword, the power belongs to the Lord, and we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord, and we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord.
Enemy presses in
The battle belongs to the Lord. to the Lord, and we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord, and we sing glory, honor, power, and strength to the Lord.
Sorry to do this, but Lance, I believe that's the wrong version. Is that the one you want? All hail the time. Is that the one you want, Ken?
Okay, so we're just doing the first verse. So, all hail the power of Jesus, and let angels prostrate fall. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all.
Evening, church. Last time I brought a Devo, I promised that I wouldn't take any math in front of you in case you weren't a fan of it. But, it's time. The math PhD student brings a little math and a little Jesus. So, we'll be today in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 through 28. 2 Corinthians 11, 23 through 28. And Paul here says, are they servants of Christ? I speak as if insane, I more so. In far more labors and far more imprisonments, beaten times without number, often in dangers of death. 5 times I received from the Jews 39 lashes. 3 times I was bitten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and day I have spent in the deep. I've been on frequent journeys in dangers from rivers, dangers from robbers, dangers from countrymen, dangers from Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, dangers on the sea, dangers among false brethren. I have been in labor and hardship for many sleepless nights, in hunger and thirst, often without food, cold and exposure. Apart from such external things, there is a daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Who is weak without my being weak? Who is led to sin without my intense concern? So, the question I asked when reading this passage a while back is, how did Paul survive all of these things that happened to him? Because it's a lot. It's a ton. And so, the math question that I asked was, what was the probability that he could survive given all of these events? And so, I took some time and did a little research, and we're going to talk through that, and then talk about what we can bring out of that in an apologetic sense. So, practically, all of these things are independent, and that may mean very little to you at all if you've had no statistics in your life. But basically, him going to jail, him being shipwrecked, has nothing to do with him being bitten by a snake, right? And so, the chance of him dying is just going to be independent. And so we can take all these probabilities and multiply them all together at the end and get a number out and be happy. And so that's what we're going to do. So, at their core, stones and beatings are examples of judicial punishments with the intent to kill. Little to no data on stonings or beatings with rods today exists because of the surrounding stigma against their problem, right? We don't do that anymore, so there's not modern data about how likely you are to survive stonings or beatings with rods, but we're going to try our best. We notice that capital punishment might be a decent measure of how to kind of add that up. And we notice that only 483 executions out of 1477 death penalties. So 39.47%. But if we think a little bit farther, that doesn't make perfect sense, right? Those measures are a little more effective. The circumstances a little different. So death penalty, probably not in question for this. But what about traumatic brain injury, right? That's potentially equivalent. It's blunt force trauma, whatever it may be. He was beaten. Let's think, what would that look like? And that yields about 16 in 100,000. 0.016%. And so that alone is plenty of people that have these traumatic things and don't survive. So you think, okay, so what was it, 5 times that he was beaten? Oh, 3 times. 3 times he was beaten, 5 times he received lashes, and once he was stoned, adding up to 9. So 9 times was blunt force applied to him, and he survived. So we'll add that up later. But that definitely points out that maybe he could have survived that. But wait, shipwrecks. Let's look at that. So what I did was looked at the number of shipwrecks and the number of people that survived from shipwrecks in the Pauline era. Like, I tried to narrow it down, and it got wild. And basically, I know this is a little laughable because it was a hard research problem. But what we find is that about 117,000 crashes happen with 15,000 deaths. So they're like, boats are crashing all the time back then because they just were kind of bad at boats, I guess. But that's maybe out of the scope of what we need to be caring about. So what I did to make life easier for me was said, maybe boats were just bad then. I'm going to think about boats today. And at the worst case, Paul was just less likely to survive than he is now. And so a lot of our numbers that we're going to use are just going to be modern day numbers. And we're going to say, well, that's a best case scenario. Paul would have survived. Best case if we use modern day numbers. And so death by motorized boat in the U.S. is 3.245% given that you're in a boat crash. So still, it seems like as a boat crash, he might have been all right. But again, we're missing another thing. Lashings, right? They lashed him 39 times, a number of 5 times. And so all of the blood that he's let out because of that is also going to be a reason to die. So to save some of the difficulty of that, we'll push forward and I'll give you the total number at the end. All things considered, all probabilities added all up. We got a 0.0106% chance of surviving the account from 2 Corinthians 11. If you like the 1 in odds, it's 1 in 10,000. Or sorry, that's not right. Yes, 1 in 10,000. So 1 in 10,000 is the same as the probability of getting struck by lightning. Well, that happens all the time. I know a buddy that right? We're on the order of things that just don't happen very frequently. And yet, God preserved him. And so, I'd like to think about the fact that this is an upper bound, right? At the best case, Paul's survival looked like getting struck by lightning and surviving. At the best case. And so we don't see that happen very frequently. At the worst, it could be 0.0000 however many and 1%, right? And so something's got to be in play there, right? Numbers don't just work themselves out, especially on one person, right? Events after event after event, yet he survived. And so the truth is that if God's got to be involved, what do we got to do about it? Right? If God had to be involved to keep Paul alive, what do we have to do about it? And that is, accept that he provides protection over his people. Accept that when there's a plan in place, God will make sure that it happens. Paul had a job to be done. God preserved him through those years. And now, that doesn't mean that we should go out and try to survive ridiculous things for the gospel, right? Neither should we go on sinning so that grace may be abound, right? Neither of those are true. We don't need to make a bunch of dumb mistakes and survive and give them to God. Instead, we ought to appreciate that he has a plan and that he protects. I'd like to also say that statistics are dangerous and that you should avoid them at all costs because you can abuse them pretty easily, right? People abuse them to claim that God had no workings in the creation of the universe, that it was all just some random chance that particles came from nowhere into everywhere. But that, again, is too far-fetched, right? And so, while numbers can give us an inkling about where God is and where God isn't, the best thing to know is that God always is. The best thing to know is that it is his universe, that he is in control. Have a good night. We'll go to class now. Yeah.
We'll have an invitation song.
Invitation song, I forgot about that. That's my apologies.
What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Nothing can force it atone. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Not of good that I have done. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know. Nothing but the blood of Jesus. You dismissed your classes.